Now going back to, let's say, to the live demonstration of Sino, more or less, here you can see the link so that you can go into the NanoCommons instance of Synode. I will copy paste it into the chat if everyone wants to have a quick look. More or less, when you go into the page, you can sign up so that you can create your own account. I again repeat, it's a fully functional account with all the features offered so yes, so data is saved inside Synode by default. I'm answering the question I just saw in the chat. The question is, how is the data saved inside Synode? Are the file accessible without the software? That's a very good question. So in general, if you save something into Synode, then it's saved into the server in which Synode is installed. That means that more or less you can think that of as a, not completely, but as sort as, let's say, an initial data repository for your data. And the size that you have within your account to save data and to store data depends on which Synode you use. What's the size of, let's say, of the server that you use in which you have the Synode? So it will be differently for the local installation, different for the commercial, and then the free or the premium versions of Synode, etc. And if the file is accessible without the software, again, that also depends on how you deal with it. More or less, what happens is that you can export your data and have them, let's say, and store them locally or send them somewhere. The way data are exported in Synode is more or less in an Excel format. If you extract, let's say, the inventory that you can actually more or less play with and define as a data template. But you will also see that you can have, let's say, a report that you actually include your samples, your protocols, your results, any activity that was performed. And this you can actually export and save in a PDF format or a Word format, I think, and so on. And in this case, as you can understand, both the Excel, the PDF, and the docx documents, these are always accessible without having to go into Synode. Now, whether you can access things that you have inside your account Synode without access to the software, this is something that I'm not sure can happen, but that makes sense because, let's say, it's in the same way that you could not more or less access data from a database without accessing the database. Again, I said the ELN is not a database, but it's the same principle. If something is behind, let's say, is locked within an account, then it's meant for some reason to be accessed through that account, in which case you would need to more or less have an account to access all that's stored inside. If you export it in the form that we said, then you can access it at any time as you wish. Any other question? I hope I answered your question, by the way, Ralph. So yeah, just scrolling quickly. Cool. So going back to the live demonstration,
or maybe one question from my side, Tasso. Sorry to interrupt. Any country restrictions, because you said that you can use it worldwide. Any country restrictions?
Not that I have experience, but Thomas can answer this question. He's here from what
China has sometimes restrictions with Google and stuff. Is this hitting maybe here?
I don't know. I think that depends on whether, let's say, the website of 7past9 is accessible, which I would imagine it is worldwide. But if, let's say, a country imposes limitation, let's say, on some traffic, then I guess it would create some bottlenecks. There are always ways around it with VPNs, etc. I don't endorse that in any means. but more or less, yeah. In my assumption is that 7+9 and Thomas and his team would not impose any restrictions themselves. So also Synode, I would also assume that they don't impose any restrictions on accessibility worldwide. But this is something I cannot really answer, to be honest.
Thank you.
So again, as I said, to use Synode, you more or less create an account by signing up. You can also, you need to confirm your account. You can click here to receive any confirmation if you don't receive the confirmation and so on. And then more or less you can log in into the system. So more or less now a quick overview of the Synode, as we said. Quickly, you have the overview page, which actually is the main page that you will log into. And here, more or less, as I said, you can consider this as a project management software where you can see that there are tasks that can be assigned to you and deadlines, because you can assign deadlines either to you or to everyone within a team and so on. I forgot to say that when you more or less create an account, by default you need to create a team. So teams are places where you can more or less invite people to join you or have a private one, so as to input the data, create the projects, the experiments, and input the data and store everything. In the NanoCommons instance of Synode, you have an unlimited number, if I'm not mistaken, of teams that you can create, which means that, let's say, you can create different teams in an organization for different groups. Or let's say if you are a single group, you can create different teams for the different projects you run, and then invite people to the specific teams based on the team that they should be into. You can have, let's say, the characterization team, you can have the toxicity team, etc. And then you can more or less move things around and move people around as required. So let's say if you wanted to create a new team, when you create your account and you have your default more or less team that you can create, you click on new team, and then you put a team name, you can put a description, etc., and then create more or less that new team. And as I said, that would be more or less unlimited amount of teams that you can create for any organization or for your group, etc. So yeah, so more or less, and then in the overview you can create new tasks, as we will see, new protocols and new reports. We will go through all this slowly. So the next thing that you have is projects. More or less, as we said, projects are more or less, as their name says, a project. So in projects, you can more or less create different projects in which you can assign members. So how this is done, you can create a test project, as you see here, just by clicking on new projects, and then you can assign the visibility. So more or less, you can have a project that only the project members that are meant to do any work on this. Oh, sorry about that. Only the team members that are supposed to see the project can be visible to them, or it can be to all the team members. That's for you to decide. Sorry, I keep already playing with that. So let's see. And then you create a test project. As you can see, you can, which was a good example, you cannot create, you cannot use the same name for the project twice, which more or less, it's very good, because then when you have to search a project, then you can actually create a, let's say, a certain way of writing things, so as you can have a good overview of what this happens. So when you create a project, more or less, it gives you a start date, the visibility, and then the members. By default, you will be a member of the project, and you will be the owner of the project. That gives you absolute, let's say, functionality on the product. So you can actually do everything yourself. More or less, you can add members, remove members, assign to people, and so on, which other members won't have to. So if you want then to add people to this project, then all you have to do is you have to click the plus sign here, and you more or less can pick from the people that are here and then invite them to add another to the project. So I will use Thomas here. I'm sorry, Thomas, for this. Etc. And that means that, and then when you add a person to the project, you also select their role. So as you can see, there are different, more or less, roles to choose with. One is owner. More or less, you give them the same rights as you have, so they can actually help you and do stuff, etc. A user, more or less, is someone that uses and can do modifications, etc., like with protocols and stuff like that, data input, and so on. A technician that has somewhat limited privileges, more or less, of data input, etc. And the viewer, that the only function that this person can do is more or less view what is in there. And this means, and usually you do this when you have people, let's say, I would recommend having all the PIs as viewers and not doing the work so that they can mess up the things. And then more or less, you pick the role that you want to add the person with, and you just press add, and then more or less, then you have a new project member and so on. What I forgot to say is that to do that, you need to have people already into your sign-out team. And how this is happening is that you need to go to settings that you will find here on the bottom left, and then you will also get an overview of of your account, more or less, and then what you go is click into teams, and then here you go into the different teams, more or less. You click on the team, and then what you can do is add team members. So what you do, you just go in, you add the email of the person that you would like to invite, and when you will do so, I will put my own mail here. And then as you do so, this will go blue. You can add more emails here, so you can invite a lot of people at the same time, and then you need to click on invite users. And also, when it comes to team, again, you have a different, let's say, classification of users, more or less. You can have them as administrators, so that they're a step lower than you, because you will be the owner. And they will have editing rights, so as to invite people, remove people from projects, and so on. They can add protocols, etc. Normal users a bit lower, and guests is the same, the equivalent of the viewer in a project, that they can actually just more or less look at things and not do a lot of things, etc. And then you just pick the role you want, and it will automatically send an email to the person that you would like to invite, and this person then would more or less get an email. They would have to accept or decline the invite, and if they do so, they will be redirected to the ELN, so as to create an account and join your team, etc. So going back to projects, so now we have created a project. We have a start date. It's visible only to the people that are supposed to be visible. We have our members, and here, if you click, sorry, if you click the dots here on the top right corner, you can edit the project, like the name, etc. People, you can archive it. As I said, you cannot delete it. I repeat that again. For data transparency purposes, you cannot permanently delete a project or data from Synode. Even when you go into the data in the results section where we have our data, you cannot delete data. You can archive data, but you cannot delete data. Here you will see that we have comments. So more or less here, what happens is that any activity that takes place, let's say in a commenting section. I did that. This needs to be done next, or I deviated in this way, and so on. You can see all the comments that you have within the project here, and the activities of the project. So as we'll see, more or less, I created a project. It was more or less, I assigned a user to the project so as to be involved in the project as well. And here, because at some point, especially if you have complex projects, etc., you have a search function for all the projects, for the team. So you can see, let's say, any comments regarding the activity. You can filter based on time, based on type, let's say groups, or what has been done, based on users, based on the project. So if I delete that, more or less, I would have a more wide functionality in terms of activities and so on from all the projects, etc. And this is how we create a project. And as I said, again, also same as with the teams, in this case, you have an unlimited number of projects that you can have. You can invite an unlimited amount of people that you can invite, and you can assign an unlimited amount of people in different projects and within each project. So the next thing to do, more or less, when you go into a project, you have the experiment. So when you create a project, you have different, let's say, work packages. So you have different teams working on a specific thing, etc., and so on. And then it's the time to create experiments. And then what happens is that you click on a new experiment, and then you create this experiment, let's say, characterization. You can again more or less input a description, and you press create. And now again you have a new and now this is an experiment which lies within the specific project. And what happens here again, you can do stuff as we will see. You get a start date and modification date. So whenever you do something, that is being recorded, so that everything is recorded and there is transparency on what happens. And we will see tasks soon. Again, now if you clear, again, you can add details. Most importantly, you can create, let's say, more or less model experiments that you can use within your group or your organization or your project. So you create one instance of an experiment, you input everything, and you can then duplicate, and you can move between experiments and projects, etc., as we will see, etc. And you can archive, of course, as always. So when you create your experiment, then if you go in, then more or less the fun begins. You start then inputting your experimental process, etc. But I realize I speak for already 20 minutes now. So more or less, I would like to ask if there are any questions so far, because I understand there's a lot of information that is being said. So aren't there any questions so far? Thank you very much. So when we more or less then want to, let's say, to create our experimental process, what we need to do is more or less edit our experiment. So by clicking edit experiment, what you do, it's this more or less widens, and then it's a very simple drag and drop method. So it tells you drag it onto canvas, you drag it here, and you create your first task, let's say, in the experimental process. So let's say we do need to do some preparation. and you add it. And you can see it says decoration here. So more or less, if you already know the different steps in your experimental process, you can drag it again. And let's say UV measurement. I'm sitting here for a bit. And you add it. And as I said, you can create dependencies between the different parts of your experimental process by just clicking on the task and just dragging in different ways based on what you have and what you want to do. You take it here and you create a dependency. So more or less, we know that the person that is responsible for performing this task knows that first they need to do that and then move to here. And then to edit your tasks, you just save the experimental workflow, and as you can see, you get more or less your workflow, let's say here. Now, before we continue, there are different things that you can do. Again, as I said, you have different actions here. You can edit the details of the experiment. You can copy it as a template. So if you have, let's say, imagine that we were going back to that complex experiment that Diego and his group performed, that you need it, and we saw how it looked in Synod as well, that you need to repeat that experiment. You would not need to do anything and set up anything from scratch. Just you could copy it as a template and then move that template, let's say, into another project, into so on, so that you can actually run the experiment again without having to set up everything from scratch again. Again, archive. Again, I will say that you cannot delete things, more or less. And then here, what needs to be done is you have a due date, which is not set, or here. So more or less, you can set a deadline. So you have a calendar, and then you say that I want, let's say, the sample preparation to take place by Wednesday. And then you share that, and then you say, okay, we did the sample preparation. Then more or less give me the results or the characterization by Thursday. So you put your deadlines here when it's required to be performed, and all this go into the activity, and notifications will go into people that will have to perform the experiments. And of course, as expected, you can assign users. Of course, by default, you can pick yourself. If you are the owner of, let's say, or the one or the person that more or less created the experiment, and then manage users, and then you can assign, in this case, it's only Thomas, I'm afraid. You can add that person, close. You see here, both me and Thomas are there, and then you just click on the name. So now the task is assigned to both of us. And then again, you can see more or less all the activity within the task by clicking on the bullet point button, that what happens exactly, and what the full, let's say, actions within that task were. Here. Perfect. And here you can see the comments, and if you want, you can add a new comment. So let's say, let's do this, and so on, and you comment, and more or less, then you have comments here. And then here you can add tags by clicking the top right button. So not selected, but you can add a new one. So let's say you can edit that. Let's say TiO2 sample preparation, and so on. And then in this way, you can have keywords assigned to each of your different tasks and experiments, so that when you go and you search something in the search box, then more or less you can yeah, so I put nothing here, so you can search and more or less be easier and quicker to find things. And this is how more or less we create our experiment. So of course, as we know,
there was a question regarding the task connection and whether you can change it afterwards.
Yes, of course. So again, how this is done here. If you also, so if let's say you want to edit or change something in the experiment, just click edit experiment. And first thing that you can see that you see here the two tasks, and you see the arrow with an X. So by clicking on the X, you just delete the arrow. And then you can change, let's say, dependencies and so on. So of course, as always, let's say you want to change something. Then in order to create the dependencies, what you need to do is you go onto the task here, and you just click on the tasks, and you get this cross and so on, and you just drag into the other task, and you just release the click. So you click on that, and you keep your you do a left mouse click, and you see the X on the screen, and then you just drag your mouse, and when you get to the task that you want to link with, you just release the left mouse button, and that creates the different dependencies. And if you want to change something, you just delete, and then you just draw again if needed or not, etc. And you just click save, of course, always, so as to save your changes, and then you have your updated workflow. The good thing is that it's very easy and straightforward to follow. You may need some time to get used to the environment and doing things, but honestly, as soon as you more or less are used to it, it's very straightforward to do so and to do things within the ELN. Any other questions? No. Okay. So as I said, so now we have a different, let's say, experimental steps. Of course, in order to get our data, what we need first and foremost is our protocol. And this is why, let's say, we have the protocols inventory in Synode, which you can find here. More or less, you can include different protocols in it. And how this happens, there are two ways. The first way is to create your own protocol and so on. And you click create, you give it a name by clicking on the new button. And then what this does is more or less you need to type in your protocol. There are a lot of things that you can do here. Again, you can add tags, the keywords. It shows you when it created, when it was last modified, the person that added it, and the people that have contributed to it. Now, the difference between added by and authors is very significant because only the person that added a protocol is able to modify a protocol. And this is just it's a security feature, more or less. So if you are the person that added more or less the protocol, and you save the protocol, then no one else can modify it and save the protocol after it's been finalized. And the reason is that, let's say, if you use the protocol into your own workflow and you are a member of a team, that means that you can take the protocol and import it into your workflow, as we will see, and you can actually more or less change it there, but you will not change the original protocol that is, let's say, included into the protocols inventory for the ELN. And in this way, the ELN makes sure that no mistakes will happen. So you can record and monitor the deviations you may make on the original protocol, but you cannot change the original protocol itself. So here you can add authors more or less. So more or less Thomas and so on. and then you do a protocol description. So this is a test protocol. As you can see, you have the full functionality of the Office Online. You click save, and then you just start adding steps using Office Online, the Office Online, and so on. And here you can see you can create a very good graphical environment. So you have checklists, you can upload files that you may have, as we said, let's say, floats that automatically be calculated when you import the data, tables, you can add images and so on, as we're going to see now, and do stuff. And then let's say, for example, if you go here, we have this protocol that was used in ACE Nano. You can see we have more or less a complete protocol, essential equipment, the chemicals, the materials that have been supplied to the partners, health and safety issues, contacts. We also included the STS from the nanomaterials they used, and then we have some preparation with a lot of images, so as people know to follow exactly the experimental process. So that's the let's say the not straightforward way. You type in your protocol and it takes time, and the other way you can import protocols from either a SINODE file of the all SINODE which is linked communicates with the protocols io.io, in which case more or less yes. So if you have your protocol into more or less into protocols.io, you can actually import here, or you can also go into external protocols and search for it. So if I put UVVs, if I'm not mistaken, I should no. Yes. So as you can see, you can go to protocols.io. You can find the protocol if it exists there, or if there's a protocol that you would like to find in protocols.io, and then import it directly into SINODE. The good thing with uploading your protocols, let's say in a platform as protocols.io, is that you, in a similar way to Zenodo, you get, let's say, a DOI for the protocol, which then you can use to cite in a report, a publication, etc. And this also demonstrates the fact that an electronic laboratory notebook is part of a data management, it's part of the data management process, and it's not a complete data management tool. So you cannot do everything. So you need an ecosystem of data management tools so as to do. Here, it will give you the protocols that belong to you more or less. Again, you can create a new and report, and then the archive again. You can again not delete. You can archive protocols, etc. So if we go back to our projects, more or less here, what you do firstly is you can import a protocol from the inventory. So the starting date and so on, and then protocol options. Here you can load it from the repository. You can import the protocol. You can export the protocol and save to the repository. So let's say we load from the repository. We use the UVVs and we get a message here. We get press OK, and then it loads the protocol here. And here you can play with the protocol more or less, and say like new steps, etc. Modify the protocol, but all the modifications that you will do, as I said, more or less will be saved here, and they will not be part of the. They will not change the original protocol as a safety feature, and so on. And then you can also assign, let's say, we'll see that in a moment, that when you create your, let's say, experimental process, you can have that as a template. Then you can actually come here and assign the samples that you have created in your data template and your inventory, so as we know that this protocol is linked to this sample in a way similar to Linux, more or less. And the other good thing here is that what it gives you is you have this that you can follow step by step, and also you can track the process by, let's say, completing the step. More or less, if you, let's say, okay, I read that, I know, I check my materials, they're correct, complete step, and that's what gives you a click, and then you can move to the next protocol. I think it's unlimited, Martin. You can import as many protocols as you like in the 7+9 instance of Sign-On. I believe it's similar for the commercial version, even the free one, but I really don't remember. But in this version, that is a fully working platform, you can import and modify as many protocols as you like. So we have loaded our protocol. Again, you can see you can assign users. It automatically more or less imports the due date based on what you put when you created the experimental step. And of course, I will ask Thomas, I add him to perform the experiment with me. And then you have the assigned users that again will get notifications and so on, so as to perform the experiment. So now that we have, again, and also you have a status that is not started, it will start, it will automatically give you more or less into the, it will automatically move into progress. But if you want, you can change the status similar to a project management software by clicking in progress. So if you want to start early, you can change it to in progress. And the collaborator that you assign to the ELN, I don't think that they get any emails, because then that would mean, let's say, that if you worked a lot on this task, let's say, they will get spammed with emails, but they will get notifications in their account. So when they log in into their account, they will get notification for the tasks and experiments, etc., projects that they are assigned to. So they can also keep track of what's going on. Again, you can add tags here, more or less for keywords, for easier search, etc., and so on. And so now that we have our protocol, more or less, we go to the data part. So here is where we track our results. And here, again, we work using the more or less the Office Online functionalities. So we can add results from text, table, files, and chemical drawings. So in text, more or less, let's say you can put here observations, and then you can say, let's say something aggregated, whatever, or all went well, and so on. And you can create, let's say, comments and so on. And the good thing is that, let's say, when you do that, the person, either you or the person that is working with you in the projects can come and add comments. You can also add tables, as we said. So more or less what you can do here is you can, let's say, you do your measurements, you measure 3 different absorption peaks, different wavelengths. You can put in here the different, more or less, different, let's say, numbers that you got. You should not get different numbers for this, hopefully. And then you can use more or less you can use the Office online functionalities. Oh, come on. What's the command? Yes, got it. Sorry about that. So you can use the Office Online functionalities so as to type in and get the standard deviation from it, more or less. You don't see one here because it's the type of standard deviation that we use each time. And then you can, let's say results here, and you add it, and more or less you get your table. And then you can modify accordingly and save accordingly. So you edit the result here, and you can type new observations. So let's say or results, save it, and so on. And of course, you can always archive the result. But again, I need to say that you cannot permanently delete things for transparency reasons. And in general, anything you do, there's gonna be here the full activity of the test project. So everything that's been done in the project, in the experiment, more or less, the activity will be here for all the people that are assigned into the specific project and specific experiment and specific task, and people that have the right to view the projects, the experiment, and the task will be able to see the full activity here. And in case you have deleted something, you would see it here. So let's say if I went and archived this table, it would go away from my results, but it will still be here and accessible and can be retrieved or tested or checked by the people that are responsible for, let's say, QA, QC purposes, or by Q, etc., and so on. And more or less, this is the way you can create an experiment, a project, an experiment, different tasks within an experiment, assign people, and actually import protocols, create, let's say, an environment where you can input your data and your observations and the settings and so on, and then get your results and track the activity. So are there any questions so far? Okay, cool. If I say anything in the chat, I will answer it. So if you've done this, so as I said in the beginning, another thing that is very important is the inventory. So inventories can be thought more or less as let's say more or less if you think of it as a type of Lean software, it's where you add more or less what you want to do, more or less. Your sample, yes, I will do. So, but I will tell you about that in a bit as soon as I finish this. As an overview. So more or less, you can add here a sample, add it on, add it by, and now here you can see a sign. So more or less, I want, if you remember, it's the other way around. When we're here in the protocol, you can see here assign from, test, and then you can pick that and assign to task, and then you can assign it to the specific task. But also, as you can see, when I click here, you can update task and downstream. What does that mean is that you can actually assign a sample to a specific workflow and assign it to all the steps of the workflow, or you can assign it to a specific workflow. So more or less, if I go back, so you can either assign, let's say, a sample here, but if you consider, let's say, that you follow the sample preparation procedure, and then you say that I have a new sample in practice, it's not the same that I actually got from, let's say, the supplier, then you can create a new entry, especially, let's say, if you take the stock solution and you put the sample in a different medium or something. So then you can create a new sample, let's say TiO2 in BSA, let's say, and then assign it to a different task, or assign the sample to the entire workflow, etc. And then you have here. So yes, as I said, you can also do it from here. No, that's no, cannot. So yeah, and then the good thing with the inventory, it's more or less that you can edit it in different ways. So you can import items, in which case, let's say, so you can import items, let's say, from by uploading file. And as you can see, you can upload .csv files, txts, and tsv or Excel files. But that comes with a slight caveat. So also note here that when import items, try to limit the amount to 500. That's for proper processing purposes. There's no limit in how many items you can import, but keep in mind that the more items you import, the longer time it will take to import and process the items that you import. And then you can upload things, etc. But as I said, you can use the inventory can be shared with other users. As you can see here, it can be viewed by all the people in the team, more or less. But they can also share with different teams within the project. So it's visible to all the teams, to all the people within a project, but also can be shared with different teams, let's say. And then in which case, if you don't share with a specific team, then the other teams will not be able to see the inventory. And as I was saying, what happens here is that you can more or less edit the inventory so as to match a data template. Now, a short issue here is that, let's say, as far as I know so far, you can, let's say, upload the data template and that automatically translates into the inventory. What you would need to do more or less is you can add columns, change columns, and so on, with the exception of some, let's say, that you cannot touch. So you can add a column. You can say that, let's say, this max absorption wavelength, and so on. You can define the column type so that the people, so that you can do different stuff, as you can see. So in case something, you don't want people to add, let's say, text or something like that, you want them just to add a number or a file, let's say. If you want to upload, let's say, for each sample, let's say the STS file, etc., you put, let's say, what you want it to be. You put the accuracy that you want it to have, and then say column. And as you can see here, that's been added. And then you can actually add stuff here. And the caveat is that if you want to import a specific template, until now, you have to add firstly the columns, and then you can upload the template with all, let's say, your the samples that you want to analyze, or if you have, let's say, data that you created in the past, then you can also upload past data, and it will automatically fill the columns. It will tell you to match the columns in case it doesn't. Let's say if you have some different nomenclature, different namings, it will actually give you a screen to match the different columns. But we will play that more in the next hackathon. And in this way, more or less, you can create your inventory and so on. What happens here? Again, you can duplicate, you can enter, you can edit it, and so on, and then copy it to a different, more or less, to a different, more or less, let's say, experiment, or use a template in a different experiment, and so on. And then reporting. So more or less, what happens here? You have this report button. So if, let's say you do your experiment, you perform your experiment. If you click reports, then you get here. You get this window, and then if you click on a new report, then you see that you have different things to test from. So let's say you want to create a report for what we did with Thomas. Here you say create, and that will give you more or less the tasks that you want to create with the report and the content that you want to include in the report. So you can pick specific tasks and specific experimental steps from your experimental process. So let's say if you went up to the characterization, you did not do the calculations, you just remove that and it will just keep that. And then you choose the content. So yes, I want the protocols, I want the steps, anything completed, anything not completed, the results, files, tables, text, etc., the activity, and so on. The comments, if you like, so you can create a full transparent report of what you did, so you can share with people. And then click add, and then it will start creating the report. Okay, we have not done much. It takes a while to, if it's a lot to create that, but then what you can do is you can either print the report, download it as a PDF or a Word document, or you can save the PDF with the inventory. So more or less, you can, for each sample, more or less, you can actually create a PDF file to link to a specific, let's say, entry, so as you know that this result, this sample was tracked, analyzed, and monitored with this specific process, and these are all the metadata, more or less, that you create, and so on. Okay, and more or less, that's how you create a new report. Something I forgot to say. Any questions so far? If there are. Yes. To come back to Rashid's question about data privacy, safety of results, and protocols. I don't really know. No, I don't really know. Theoretically, the results, as I showed so far, they are kept and shared between specific teams. So let's say if you have a project that people are assigned to it, then these people will be able to access and see your data. So in practice, this is why you can choose specific people to be able to see specific projects and specific experimental processes within a project. And then, so even within a project, you can actually have people not being able to see the data. And of course, you can have people not being able to modify the data if they are just viewers, etc. In this case, so since everything is in a platform, theoretically, you need your account to log into. And everything is tracked in terms of activity, whether something changes, is created, download, etc. Then you have full, let's say, a full overview of the different of what people do within a project, and no one outside the assigned people is able to access this. Okay. theoretically, the philosophy is that if you are part of a team, then you should know that you are part of the team, in which case people are able to see the other people that are within their team. So when it comes to, let's say, privacy in the GDPR, this is more how it works. People that are not part of the team do not know that the team exists. So no one external is able to see anything that are within a team. Anyone outside the team is able to see that this team exists, to be honest. So there's no way that you can actually search for a specific team or a specific person and find them. The only difference is that if you, let's say, want to invite a person into a specific team, that then you need to send an email, as I showed you, to go so that the people can accept the invitation. It will let you know that person already has a sign-out account. That's the only thing. But in this case, more or less, you already know the person, you already know his personal details, and you know, so that's not data sharing, personal data sharing. About data privacy now, it's the same thing. So as I said, the electronic laboratory notebook, the philosophy is that you work with other people and you share things with other people that you're supposed to share with. So as I said, if you're not part of the team, if you're not part of the project or the task, and etc., the experiment or task, you're not able to access or see the data. And this is why there's this assignment process, so that everyone can see what they are entitled to see. That also has to do with safety of results. That no one that's not supposed to can access the results. Now, that also comes with a caveat that you also have, let's say, a safe environment in which you have the installation of sign-out. So if you have, let's say in Birmingham, we install sign-out in our local network. We put a firewall around it. No one outside University of Birmingham IP or even a local IP in a specific laboratory can access sign-out. So that makes it harder for, let's say, a hacker theoretically to come and hack your account or the sign-out in general or anything. And this is the same with the cloud version of sign-out. So more or less, it's all about the security of the server in which sign-out is installed on. Now, if there are any, let's say, issues with the code of the software, this is something that I cannot comment on. So theoretically, should be safe enough. So sign-out, the people that have developed sign-out say that they use the highest quality safety quality features. But I am not sure what happens, let's say, if some bug exists that I don't know, or if it is identified, and how, let's say, the local instances of sign-out are updated with new features. I don't know if Thomas knows, because he wasn't involved in installing the sign-out. If he does, invite him to comment on that. But in general, that's how it is. And then in this way, your results are safe. And of course, but I want to remind everyone that good IT practices require that you have your server where you do things, but you always have a backup server, so your data are being backed up continuously, so that you don't lose any data. So in our lab in Birmingham, all our computers are being backed up into our accounts and so on. All the results that we do in the instruments, so what we save will be saved in our, let's say, personal space in the University of Birmingham, so that, let's say, if a hard disk fails from, let's say, an ICP or ES, then you will not lose any data. True story, it has happened, by the way. So that. And for the sharing of protocols, as I said, the protocols repository is open to all the team members. So as long as you're part of the team, you can see all the protocols that are part of the of your team and so on. because the idea is that if you are part of a specific team, then usually, more or less, you have to follow specific protocols, usually, to do some things. So it doesn't make any sense to have the same protocol in different copies within a repository, but people, and especially when new people come in, then we tell them this is the protocol that we follow, let's say, for some preparation. For example, let's say we use the NanoChain protocol for, let's say, for sample staking. I'm sorry, I'm blacked out. So yes, and in which case the protocols that are within the inventory, the protocols inventory repository will be accessible to everyone within the team. But if you make any deviations within the experimental, the project and the experimental workflow, then any deviations you make there will not be visible to people that are not assigned to see this workflow. That's going to be visible to the people that are only have access to the specific workflow. And in this case, for transparency reasons, all the people that should see this, any deviations should be able to see this. Because the idea is that you do this experiment with these people so that you can together get results. You don't do it alone. If you want to work alone, then you can create a team, let's say, for which you are the only member, and have your own, let's say, personal repository to try weird, crazy ideas and so on, crazy protocols, deviations, or try to create something new without inviting anyone. In this case, you will be the only person that is able to access everything that they are within this team. And of course, I have to note, we don't click on the strange links when we get an email. We don't use passwords that are very easy to guess. So it's also the personal aspect of safety. So you don't let your account be hacked. More or less, that's the answer, and a quick overview of an answer. I hope, Rashid, I answered your question in a way. What else? Did I forget anything? I think that's all for now for the first demonstration of the basic functionalities of Synode. Don't believe I've forgotten anything. Please, Ralph, I have been using both. So I started with the cloud version of the Synode, and as you saw so here I'm demonstrating the local installation of Synode. The work that you've seen that we did also with Diego and the Ace Nano was in the cloud version of Synode. So Ace Nano work, our collaboration with LN Nano in Brazil was internal Birmingham work was initially conducted in the cloud version, the commercial version of Synode. That because in the past the free version had more functionalities than it has now. Understandable. Now we have, because there were always limitations in what you could do with the free version of Synode, and because let's say in many cases it is considered safer to have a local installation, we have moved towards a local installation. We're moving with Birmingham towards a local installation that's going to be behind the Birmingham firewall. Now with NanoCommons, we have been transferring stuff and data and so on. So let's say Diego and his team are transferring stuff to the 7+9 installation of Synode. Because by taking the Docker and installing it, you have the full unlimited version. Of course, then it becomes your responsibility to keep things safe, backed up, updated, and so on. So you need an IT team to do that behind you. So yeah, in practice at the moment, we use both. but I believe we will be moving towards the local installation so as to remove any, let's say, limits in what we can do, create, and so on. Yeah. Yes. Yes, that will be a very good idea to have a local installation, especially if we have a strict policy. And I really understand that if you have sensitive data, working on regulatory data, developing, let's say, SOPs, if you have sensitive data, I always believe that since Synode is open access software, it's always better to have a local installation. And I believe Fraunhofer has a very good IT team that can do this thing in like a working week or something like that. I believe the guys from Synode have done a great work and so on. So always having your own, but always having your own firewall and have the responsibility for that is always best in this case. Yeah. If you need any advice or anything, I would direct you to Thomas so as to give you any help it may be needed for actually having the local installation of Sign. I also have to be honest, there are other solutions when it comes to ALNs out there. I have played with a few, not all, but so far I believe Synode in our case, for me, has given us the best functionality we can get so far. Yeah, that's it on my side. If you have any more questions, I will be very happy to answer. I would also like to invite you in 2 weeks' time to our next hackathon, where more or less we can play with all these things that you saw here, and that like doing a hands-on practice so as to get a feel of the environment. We go with it step by step together, and then you can be able more or less to use it yourself without having to go through the process of doing things and finding things yourself. Again, if there are any more questions, I will be happy to answer. I would also like to invite Thomas or Martin if they have any more comments, suggestions or whatever. Please feel free to jump in, and thank you very much for attending.
First of all, thank you very much, Tassos, for this great and very detailed and very clear insight demonstration of the tool as it is now in the powered way by 7+9 and NanoCommons. Maybe one question: is there any homework we can ask people that would like to come back in 2 weeks to do so far? Until then, anything that they should try out just the kind of steps that you have been demonstrating?
They can also play with. I think that works. So Synode offers a lot of support and courses so that you can play and start working with Synode. So if you click either Google and go into support, or into support, you can get the PDF of the functionality overview. So either Google it and go here. You can find the knowledge base, video tutorials, and so on. So you can get a starting feel of how Synode works and see how they do things, the people that created it, and support. Or through Synode, you can click on courses and it will directly take you there. So I guess that if you want to play with it a bit, so you can do the course and so on, else you can more or less wait for the next hackathon, where more or less we will play with all the things that we said: importing data, uploading data, importing protocols, fixing the data template, and so on. It's a hands-on practice, and also a bit more advanced things. So how do I move around projects, teams, etc., and so on. That's it, more or less, Martin.
If people start playing already and already put in data in the cloud version, and then after the workshop, the second one, decide and get their IT service on kind of installing the local? How easy is it to transfer all that?
You can, with export functions, more or less, you can transport things easily. So more or less, usually Synode gives you a specific format, the .elm format, I think, that you can move things around. But also you can have, let's say, Excel files, as I showed, the text files or whatever, so that you can upload into the protocols, the results section, etc. And then import this and transfer your data from the cloud to the local installation, etc. Of course, this will require some manual work because there's not yet functions that you can, let's say, take from the cloud version directly to the local version. But as Ralph also said, I believe that if you want a local installation because you have sensitive data, you would not want direct communication with the cloud platform. You would prefer to do it yourself behind the firewall. That's it.
Okay, I do not see questions in the chat. Our last call.
Just very quickly from my side, I don't have much to say because Tassos really covered it very, very nicely. The only thing is when you see that there are on this training or the NanoCommons version, if you see there are some limitations that you don't have enough space or that it's too slow or whatever, please contact us because we are really running that on a very limited server at the moment. Because as long as there is no much traffic on there, it doesn't make sense to have a big machine behind that, but it's cloud-based, therefore we can easily increase everything, yeah, a number of processors, number of hard drive, main memory, everything, because we just have to then ask the cloud provider to increase that. Yeah, if you run into problems, we have at the moment no experience how resource intensive that is. Yeah, therefore we are also still learning, and it's very good to have this information then also for you when you really then decide at one point of time to take that in-house, that you know directly what you have to prepare for. That's more or less everything.
Appeared. Registration is free of charge for how long?
Yeah, this is a service we offer for free. It is not meant, or there are these limitations that as long as we cannot or as long as this is a free service and I don't want to make a commercial service out of that. Yeah, it will be from our side always be a free service, but that also means that there are limitations. Yeah, I don't think that there is a major security problem with the software, but for example, we cannot take responsibility for that. Yeah, therefore, I see it really more as a training and test environment. And then when you really want to take that as a production site, then I guess that either using the commercial version from Synode or installing it yourself in your own system, as Tassos explained, is probably the better alternative.
Good. So leaves me with thanking once again Tassos for the great session. Advertising also, again, I have put the registration link again to the chat, and we will send it out via the typical channels. Nano Safety Cluster Working Group A, other working groups certainly too, other projects and so on. The workshop in 2 weeks, and until then I wish you a nice time. We will upload the recording and the slide sets to YouTube and Zenodo as soon as possible. Latest early next week should be there, and so you can review and prepare yourself for the hands-on session early enough.